You are inside the studio with PowerTex. Welcome to the Mixed Media podcast for artists, crafters, and adventurous creators. This podcast is for you if your creativity cannot be defined by any label, and where the only limit here is your imagination. I'm Michelle Brewer, Creative Director at PowerTex UK. Now let's talk all things PowerTex, mixed media, and creativity. Hello, you are inside the studio with me, and today we're talking about that pesky problem of when we don't like what we've created, or when we're creating something and it goes wrong. Now, it's really common, so it happens all the time, and there's a very short and quick answer to this. So I'll share that with you, and then we're going to unpick it and discuss the problem. But there's one rare exception, and I want to make this absolutely clear. Occasionally, it has gone wrong and it just needs to go. But that is so rare that hardly ever happens. But thinking that it's gone wrong and thinking that we hate it and it has to go, that happens all the time. So knowing the difference, here's the short answer. When you don't like something, or you think my piece of work is not looking right, I hate it, it's going wrong, this is the thing. You haven't finished. That's all it is. It's that simple. You haven't finished your work. So I do this all the time. I'm not speaking from a position of judgment or know-it-all. I'm speaking from a position of experiencing this on a regular basis and witnessing this in my classes as well when people are working, whether it's in my online tutorials or in person in my workshops. I see this happening before my own eyes. And it happened just this week. There was a great example in a workshop I was running this week. Now, all it is that you haven't finished your work. And I know that that's easy for me to sit and say. But what's going on is, quite often when we're creating something, we're using another, say, for example, we're using another piece of work. So we very rarely just create something randomly from our head. We have either seen something we like, or we're using a reference picture, we are recreating another creator's or artist's piece of work, we're copying something natural that we've seen in the wild. There's all sorts of things, but we'll have a reference point. And that reference point is the finished piece. And we're starting from scratch. So straight away we're at a disadvantage because all we've got, unless we're following a step-by-step guide, our reference point is the finished piece. And it doesn't show us the multiple layers between start, which we'll call point A, and finish, which we'll call point Z. So it doesn't show us all of those pieces in between. And we're constantly looking at what we're doing. So whether that's drawing and the lines we're placing on the page, or painting and the brushstrokes, or clay modelling or sculpting, there's all different ways that we can create, or collaging. But we are constantly comparing the point that we're at to the finished article and nothing in between. So whichever stage you get to, you're constantly looking and thinking, mine doesn't look like that. Oh, it's not going right. Of course it's not. You're not finished. And I know that sounds simple, but it took me years for that clarity to really sink in and for me to understand what that means. So I still do this. It's much it's much easier for me to demonstrate this on something like a watercolour painting. So I'm a terror for doing this in watercolours. And actually the materials for watercolour painting are much cheaper than in sculpting. So it's easier to give up, and even easier with drawing. So you'll look and I'll give up quite easily. And they're skills. So you are not born either a brilliant artist or not. You know, there's nobody deciding on your day of birth whether you're going to be a gifted creator or not. It comes with practice. So of course some people find drawing easier than others, or find recreating a picture on painting or something easier than others. But it doesn't mean that they're better than you, or that they can do it and you can't. The difference is usually practice. So something like drawing as a skill, that definitely improves with practice. The more you do something, the better you get at it. And it's the same with everything, isn't it? It's the same in all sorts of things, not just in creative pursuits. So I want you to remember that. Lots of times when you're looking at a finished article, a reference picture, maybe another artist picture that you're recreating, they have practiced that many times before they have perfected it. So quite often the piece that you're copying is the perfected piece that has taken many hours of practice to get there. And you're seeing, you don't see any of that. So it's built up of layers of practice to perfect the piece. But also, it's literally built up of layers. So very rarely is anything a one and done. So things are very rarely a one and done. They are a multitude of layers. And I mean that from a colouring perspective, a layering, all sorts of things. So let me unpick that. What am I talking about? When someone says, I love that colour. So this is really key in PowerTex. We use a technique called dry brushing more often than any other technique to finish a piece off. So we've used dry brushing, and somebody will look and say, oh, I love that. What colour did you use? And you'll answer and say, turquoise. Oh, I love turquoise. It's my favourite. And you're not being untruthful, but you might have added a bit of blue in with that turquoise just to get the right tone. Or you might have added a touch of titanium white into the turquoise to lighten it, to make it pop. But, you know, you don't have time. You're just answering quickly, I use turquoise. And so someone then tries to recreate what you did, and their turquoise doesn't look exactly the same as yours because they use turquoise straight out of the pot. And you use turquoise, but then later you added a touch of blue, and then you added a touch of white. Do you see? So no one's being deceitful there, but there were layers, or maybe they used the turquoise on its own, and then they let it dry and put another layer with a hint of white on. I do that all the time. And you can see how quickly, and that's just one example, how quickly those layers that are not shared, you can't tell in the end piece. And you can't always tell when you've asked somebody either. How did you create that colour or that finish or that look? And people don't always know. They don't always remember exactly the steps they took. Because when you're in the flow of creating, and you might have lots of materials to hand, I've done this myself recently, and I've made something and I was sharing my process and sharing what I did, and I missed out one of the steps, not deliberately, but just because I saw it on the table and thought, oh, there, I'll just pop that in. It's really easy to do. So I want you to think about that when you're creating your piece, all of the layers, either hidden or obvious, that have been put into that creation that you're trying to copy, that you can't tell and you can't see. So the answer to the problem, what do I do, is you keep going. So if you are sat there thinking, I hate this piece, or you're looking around and you've got thinking, this isn't going well, you need to get back to the drawing board. I want you to listen to the voice, my voice, saying, you haven't finished. Get back to work. And I mean that with love and respect. You need to go back to the drawing board. Get your piece back out. Maybe you need to be a bit braver. And with power text specifically, this can happen at every single stage where you think, I don't like it, it's not going well. So you might start, you get the initial, wow, I love it, this is fabulous. But then very quickly you think, oh, it doesn't look like that one. So I hear it, people say to me, well, it doesn't look like yours. And at no point does that happen at the end. This is on the build up. So with power text, you very rarely ever get two things that turn out exactly the same. Right, it just doesn't happen. There's so many variables. So that's a good thing. But I understand when you are learning and you're trying to create a specific piece. So maybe you've started with the fabric sculpting and you're using white or ivory, for example, and it's difficult especially when you're new to fabric sculpting, to understand where a project is going, where you are heading with this piece. And with fabric sculpting, it's all about the folds and the creases and the texture that show up later. So you don't get to see those or the magic of those until the colour is added. So it can be difficult right at the start. So let's say you're fabric sculpting and you think, I don't really know if I like it. That's okay. I want you to know that that's okay to feel like that. So still using the example of white or ivory or even transparent light coloured power text. So you've done the fabric sculpting. Maybe you're going to spray some Bista or some liquid power, some liquid colour onto it. So you spray it and you're nervous. So you do just a little spray and it looks all right. It's not the wow factor. Probably because you've been a bit hesitant, but most definitely because you haven't finished. So I encourage you to be a bit bolder with the spraying at this stage. So be bolder with the colour, apply that colour in a bold way. If you're just going to be sort of having a half-hearted attempt at power text, you're probably going to be disappointed with yourself all the time. So just be bold, just jump straight in, get your shoulders under the water. So add the colour, we're talking adding the spraying colour, and then you think, I quite like it. I'm sharing what happens to me in my head, but also what I see on a regular basis. You think, I quite like it. I don't want to do anything else to it now. Still doesn't look like yours, but I don't want to do anything else to it now. I'm scared to spoil it. So this is like a creative cycle process that we're going through. It's not finished. Let me tell you now, it's not finished. I mean, in theory, it could potentially be a finished piece if that's what you're going for, but we're imagining you're not. Bista on wet power text and then dried with a hairdryer is an amazing piece of work. You could finish it with some gorgeous crackles. But you might be looking at it, and if the reason you're not finishing is because you're scared of ruining it, that's a different problem, isn't it? It's a different podcast. But I would like you to keep going at this point. So we've added that first layer of colour. And what that will have done is highlight all those beautiful folds and creases and textures that you've created in the fabric sculpting. So you'll see that. And it is a magical moment in itself. Like you see it and you think, oh, that looks fabulous. But there's the concern of the next step. And so we're going to skip sort of adding embellishments and we'll go straight to adding the colour with dry brushing at the end. So let's say I've persuaded you to pick up your paintbrush and add some dry brushing to this piece of work. And this is where you can really hesitate or start to worry that you're going to ruin your piece or that it doesn't look like the reference piece that you're using and it's just not got the wow factor, but you quite like it. So maybe it will do. It won't do. It's not finished. And there's a real lack of confidence around adding colour. I understand why. You've worked quite hard up to this point. You don't want to wreck it. Maybe you don't know enough about the range of colours or the colour options. There are an overwhelming number of colour options, actually. I call it overwhelming / exciting, because since taking over Powertex UK, there is no one to stop me buying all the pigments. And so we're always going to have a huge choice of pigments in the range. I am out of control with the pigment shopping. I love it. I'm not even sorry. So there is an overwhelming amount of choice with pigments, but just try and take it back to, we want to be happy with our piece. We're not happy at this stage because it's not finished. So then you choose a colour, one that you know is going to work, colour combination that you know is going to work. We'll do a whole piece, we'll do a whole podcast on colouring another day. And then maybe you give your piece of work a little tickle with a bit of dry brushing. A little tickle is not enough. It's not going to cut the mustard, but you're too scared to go forward. And I am not judging you. I completely get it. Maybe you give it a little tickle. You think, oh, that looks quite nice. And that's it. That looks all right. That'll do. That'll do. I'm scared. Oh, no, I don't want to. I'm not going to do any more. I'm going to leave it. And then you tell yourself, the trick is knowing when to walk away. I've heard all these thoughts. You've seen it written somewhere, so you think the trick is knowing when to walk away. I'm going to leave it before I overwork it. In Powertex, the rules are not quite the same. I want you to overwork that beast. Get it out there. You haven't finished until you're sat there thinking, oh my gosh, I love it. And I promise you, that will happen. If you keep going, that will happen. If you're sat there thinking, oh, it's okay, I'm going to stop before I spoil it, that sort of tight little holding back, that one toe in the water, that is not the thing. You are not done. That is when you'll say, oh, I quite like it, it's okay. And maybe you'll share a picture. When you push forward, you've got to be brave, you've got to go for it. And you come back. And this happened last week. So somebody shared a really beautiful piece of work with me that they'd made. Absolutely beautiful. They coloured it. Their work was a very high standard. But it just wasn't quite finished. They just needed to be a bit more colour. They needed to add a bit more colour. That's all. And I could see, like, their work was beautiful. And they had said, I'm not sure. That was the word. So I'm not sure. If you're not feeling sure, it is not finished. That's it. I want you to feel sure. I want you to feel either sure that you love it or sure that you hate it. Not, I don't think I like it, or I'm not sure. So either way, if you are sure that you hate it, then you have been bold and you have put yourself out there and you have created something, and you can always get the Powertex out and go over it. If you have finished a piece and you are sure that you hate it, and that is extremely rare, you can always get the Powertex out. That's why I love Powertex, and go over it. But I want you to keep going until you are sure. Sure you love it or sure you hate it. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be sure that you love it. I'm really excited about what you've done. This is so easy to demonstrate in things like watercolour painting and drawing and things where it's representative art. But when it comes to a more subjective, creative project, it can be harder because things are at our own taste and we often seek validation from others. That's okay. It feels good to make something that other people love too. It's hard putting yourself out there. It is difficult, I think, because there's a part of you, isn't there? There's a part of your heart. You've created something and then you're holding it up for the world. You're holding a little piece of your heart out and saying, what do you think? And it makes you vulnerable. So if you've made something, I'm proud of you. It doesn't have to be that you love it or hate it. It just has to be finished. And then I am extremely proud of you. And our Facebook group, the PowerTech Studio, is a safe place for you to share your work. So you can share pictures of your creations. There's lots of very clever people in that group that have been creating for a long time that share their work. And I would love you to look at that for inspiration, not comparison. And we also have people that lots of new beginners, and if they're brave enough to share their work, I'm extremely proud. It does take courage to share your work. It takes courage to show up online, but you don't always have to ask for feedback. You can just say, hey, this is my first piece. Look at what I made. Or this is the first time I have attempted something. Or this is my 10th go and I still don't know. I'll tell you the answer right now. If you still don't know, it's not finished. Keep going. But that's why we hate or sometimes dislike our work. We just, I say sometimes, it's the majority of the time. It's a piece that you haven't finished. And I think that probably applies to many things, but it always applies to artwork. So if you're looking at it, thinking, oh, I'm not sure what's wrong. You haven't finished. Go back, maybe do some dry brushing with Ivory PowerTechs. So you can dry brush with PowerTechs first, and that will soften any harsh backgrounds. It will soften any dark areas, and then you can apply the dry brushing pigment over the top. I think I've talked myself into a colouring episode, a colouring podcast episode at some point. I'm going to wrap that up there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a superb week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.